in a stunning revelation that could reshape the geopolitical landscape of West Africa. Sources close to the Élysée Palace and Aso Rock have leaked details of a clandestine meeting between French President Emmanuel Macron and Nigerian President Bola Tinubu. Held under the cover of darkness in a neutral European location last month, the discussions allegedly centered on leveraging an impending U.S. military base in Nigeria as a strategic asset to orchestrate a covert operation aimed at reintegrating Burkina Faso into the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and dismantling its ongoing military junta. According to multiple anonymous insiders with knowledge of the talks, speaking on condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the matter, the meeting was shrouded in secrecy, bypassing official diplomatic channels to avoid alerting regional adversaries. Macron, whose administration has faced mounting criticism for France's waning influence in the Sahel region following a series of military coups, reportedly initiated the dialogue. Tinubu, Nigeria's influential leader and current ECOWAS chair, is said to have been receptive, viewing the proposal as a means to bolster Nigeria's role as a regional stabilizer amid escalating instability. At the heart of the alleged plot is the U.S. military's planned establishment of a forward operating base in northern Nigeria, near the borders with Niger and Chad. While Washington has publicly framed this as an anti-terrorism initiative to combat groups like Boko Haram and ISIS West Africa, the sources claim Macron pitched it to Tinubu as a potential launchpad for a counter-intervention in Burkina Faso. This would involve coordinated efforts to neutralize threats from pro-junta forces, paving the way for a swift restoration of civilian rule and Burkina Faso's return to ECOWAS, from which it was suspended after the 2022 coup led by Captain Ibrahim Traore. Delving into the backstory, Burkina Faso's political turmoil traces back to January 2022, when Traore ousted President Marc Christian Kaboré amid widespread protests over insecurity and corruption. A subsequent coup in September of that year solidified Traore's grip, leading to the country's withdrawal from ECOWAS in early 2024 alongside Mali and Niger, forming the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. This bloc has increasingly aligned with Russia, inviting Wagner Group, now Africa Corps, mercenaries to replace French forces expelled in 2023. France, under Macron, has long seen the Sahel as a sphere of influence, with Operation Barkhane once deploying thousands of troops to fight jihadists. However, anti-French sentiment has surged, culminating in the closure of French bases and a pivot toward Moscow. The proposed U.S. base, details of which emerged in U.S. Defense Department briefings late last year, is touted as a drone and logistics hub equipped with advanced surveillance capabilities. Insiders suggest Macron envisions it as a neutral intermediary. French special forces could embed with U.S. personnel for plausible deniability, while Nigerian troops, backed by ECOWAS mandates, lead any ground incursion. This setup would counter an attack, as one source phrased it, potentially referring to preemptive strikes against AES reinforcements or Russian-backed militias that might resist a pro-ECOWAS push. Complicating matters are the broader implications for regional alliances. Nigeria, as ECOWAS's economic powerhouse, has historically advocated for democratic norms but hesitated on direct military interventions, as seen in its cautious stance during the Niger crisis in 2023. Tinubu's administration has prioritized economic recovery post-COVID and oil sector reforms. Yet sources indicate he sees value in countering Russian encroachment, which has fueled arms flows and disinformation campaigns across the Sahel. Macron, facing domestic elections in 2027 and scrutiny over France's Africa policy, may be desperate to score a win against what Paris views as Kremlin meddling. Whispers of the meeting have already rippled through diplomatic circles. A leaked memo, purportedly from a French foreign ministry aide, outlined scenarios including airstrikes on junta strongholds in Ouagadougou and economic incentives for Burkinabe elites to defect. Another angle involves cyber operations to disrupt AES communications, drawing on U.S. tech expertise at the Nigerian base. However, risks abound. Any misstep could ignite a wider conflict, drawing in Mali, Niger, or even Algeria, which has grown closer to Russia. As tensions simmer, questions swirl about the involvement of other players. Has the Biden-Harris administration, or its successor, been looped in, or is this a rogue Franco-Nigerian gambit? Intelligence analysts point to increased U.S. drone activity over the Sahel in recent weeks, but official denials from Washington, Paris, and Lagos persist. With Burkina Faso's junta vowing to resist neo-colonial interference, the stage is set for potential escalation, though the full extent of these secret deliberations remains murky. As the veil lifts further on the covert rendezvous between French President Emmanuel Macron and Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, emerging intelligence paints a picture of raw imperial ambition clashing with the harsh realities of a post-colonial Sahel. Sources embedded in European diplomatic networks describe the meeting not merely as a strategic huddle, but as a frantic scramble by France to claw back economic dominance lost in the wake of successive coups in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. With Russia's shadow looming larger over the region's vast mineral wealth, Macron is allegedly positioning Tinubu, portrayed by critics as a compliant intermediary, as the linchpin in a high-stakes operation to restore French oversight, potentially at the barrel of a gun. France's grip on the Sahel's resources has eroded dramatically since the early 2020s, a decline accelerated by military takeovers that ousted pro-Paris governments and expelled French forces. Once the backbone of France's energy security, uranium from Niger, where French state-owned Orano, formerly Areva, operated massive mines, supplied up to 25% of the European Union's nuclear fuel needs, fueling France's vast array of reactors that generate over 70% of its electricity. In Burkina Faso and Mali, gold mining concessions held by French and Western firms like Endeavour Mining yielded billions annually, bolstering Paris's trade balance while locals decried exploitative contracts that funneled profits abroad. Lithium deposits in the region, eyed for the global green energy transition, added another layer, with French interests scouting partnerships before the coups disrupted access. The coups, starting with Mali in 2020, followed by Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger in 2023, marked a seismic shift, as juntas rallied under anti-French banners, accusing Paris of neocolonialism via the CFA franc currency and military pacts that prioritized French interests over local security. Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traore, in particular, has nationalized key assets, renegotiating mining deals to favor state control and pivoting toward Russian partnerships for protection. Russia's Africa Corps, the rebranded Wagner Group, has filled the vacuum left by France's Operation Barkhane, deploying mercenaries to guard mines in exchange for resource concessions. Gold from Burkina Faso and Mali reportedly funding Moscow's war machine in Ukraine. This realignment has cost France dearly. Uranium imports plummeted after Niger's junta halted exports to Orano in 2023, forcing Paris to seek costlier alternatives from Kazakhstan and Australia, while gold revenues for French-linked firms have halved amid contract disputes. Enter Macron's alleged playbook, reclaiming these assets by any means necessary. Insiders claim the French leader, stung by domestic backlash over lost Africa, views the restoration of Burkina Faso to ECOWAS as the first domino in a broader reconquest. By leveraging the U.S. military base in Nigeria, slated for completion by mid-2026 with drone capabilities and joint training facilities. The plan purportedly includes covert supply lines for pro-ECOWAS forces, intelligence sharing to map Russian positions, and economic pressure tactics like reinstating CFA linkages to choke junta finances. Tinubu, whose November 2024 visit to Paris focused on trade and security ties, is cast in leaks as Macron's puppet, willing to deploy Nigerian influence in ECOWAS to orchestrate the intervention. Critics in Abuja whisper that Tinubu's motivations stem from Nigeria's own resource ambitions, securing oil pipeline routes through the Sahel, while aligning with France offers access to European investment amid Nigeria's fiscal woes. This pivotal meeting, held in a discreet Swiss chalet according to one source, has ignited tensions across the region. Protests erupted in Ouagadougou last week after rumors of the plot surfaced on social media, with Traore's supporters chanting against French puppets and vowing to bolster defenses with Russian arms. In Niger and Mali, junta leaders have heightened alerts, accusing ECOWAS of plotting aggression, while Russian state media amplifies narratives of Western meddling to rally local support. Diplomatic cables leaked to African outlets suggest fraying ties within ECOWAS itself, with Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire backing a hardline stance, but Ghana urging caution to avoid a proxy war. U.S. officials, while publicly neutral, have privately expressed concerns over French adventurism potentially destabilizing the anti-terror fight, yet the base's strategic placement hints at tacit approval. As whispers of troop movements near Nigeria's northern borders grow louder, and encrypted communications between Paris and Lagos spike, the Sahel teeters on the edge of renewed conflict. With economic stakes in the billions and geopolitical rivalries intensifying, the full ramifications of this Franco-Nigerian gambit are only beginning to unfold, raising alarms from Bamako to Moscow. As fallout from the leaked Macron-Tinubu meeting reverberates across West Africa, analysts and regional stakeholders are grappling with its potential ramifications for the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. The defiant confederation of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger that has become a bulwark against perceived Western dominance. Formed in September 2023 amid a wave of military coups, the AES, initially the Liptako Gourma Charter, evolved into a full confederation by July 2024, with ambitions for a joint parliament, investment bank, and even a sovereign currency to break free from the CFA franc shackles. This bold pivot toward self-reliance, bolstered by Russian security ties, has positioned the AES as a direct challenge to France's historical stranglehold. But the alleged Franco-Nigerian plot could inflict severe blows, potentially fracturing the alliance or sparking outright confrontation. The AES's formation was rooted in shared grievances: escalating jihadist violence, economic stagnation under ECOWAS sanctions, and accusations of French-sponsored destabilization. Leaders like Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traore, Mali's Assimi Goïta, and Niger's Abdourahmane Tiani have repeatedly charged Paris with funding terrorism and meddling to maintain control over resources like uranium, gold, and lithium. Claims echoed in recent arrests of suspected French spies and public denunciations. By 2025, the alliance had launched initiatives like a joint anti-terror battalion and a confederal bank for investment and development in Bamako, aiming to foster an African renaissance independent of Western aid. Yet, challenges persist. Political instability delays civilian transitions, Islamist groups exploit border vulnerabilities, and European rejections of AES passports have stranded citizens, crippling trade and diplomacy. Insiders suggest the Macron-Tinubu discussions could exacerbate these fractures, with a bad impact on the AES manifesting in multiple ways. A US-backed base in Nigeria might enable cross-border incursions, undermining the AES's Mutual Defense Pact and forcing resource diversion from development to militarization. If successful, such operations could resolve the AES by isolating Burkina Faso, potentially reinstalling a pro-ECOWAS regime and dissolving the confederation through economic incentives or coercion. Niger and Mali, already deepening Russian alliances, might retaliate by closing borders or escalating accusations of Nigerian complicity in French schemes, further straining ECOWAS unity. Social media in the region buzzes with warnings of a Sahel rift, where external pressures could lead to internal betrayals or a proxy war pitting AES forces against ECOWAS-backed militias. At the core of this tension lies centuries of French neocolonialism, particularly through monetary policies that critics argue have perpetuated abject poverty in Francophone Africa. The CFA franc, established in 1945 as the colonies françaises d'Afrique currency, was designed to anchor post-colonial economies to France, requiring member states to deposit 50% of foreign reserves in the French treasury and pegging the currency to the euro, formerly the French franc. This setup, while providing exchange rate stability, has been lambasted as a tool of dependency. It limits monetary sovereignty, favors French imports, and enables Paris to extract resources at below-market rates. Uranium from Niger fueling French nuclear plants, gold from Mali and Burkina Faso bolstering European coffers, all while local populations languish in underemployment and inequality. Studies link CFA membership to stunted growth, with 11 of 15 adherent countries classified as least developed, their economies progressing little since 1960s independence despite vast wealth. Macron's administration, despite rhetoric of reform, has clung to these mechanisms, viewing the AES's push for a new currency as an existential threat. The meeting's alleged outcomes could amplify this. Reinstating CFA ties in a resolved Burkina Faso might flood markets with cheap French goods, undercut local industries, and deepen poverty cycles, while AES holdouts face intensified sanctions or proxy conflicts. Recent coups exploited anti-French sentiments over these issues, with juntas promising sovereignty but delaying democratic returns amid security woes. As Russian influence grows, evidenced by joint operations repelling al-Qaeda attacks, and AES leaders convene on shared challenges like migration and insecurity, the Macron-Tinubu axis introduces volatile variables. Could this lead to AES dissolution, a strengthened confederation through adversity, or a broader regional realignment? With protests mounting in AES capitals and cryptic signals from Moscow, the meeting's ripple effects are poised to redefine power dynamics, though the path forward remains fraught with uncertainty. As the covert Macron-Tinubu meeting continues to fuel speculation about a Franco-Nigerian push to reclaim influence in Burkina Faso, a deeper examination reveals the acute desperation driving France's maneuvers. a profound crisis in accessing the Sahel's mineral bounty following the expulsion of French forces and the nationalization of key assets. For decades, France enjoyed near unfettered control over uranium, gold, lithium, and other resources in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, often extracting them at rock-bottom prices or under exploitative terms that critics label as modern-day plunder. The string of military coups since 2020 has shattered this arrangement, forcing Paris to confront skyrocketing costs, supply disruptions, and a humiliating pivot to alternative suppliers. Challenges that have proven increasingly insurmountable and now underpin the alleged plot to restore ECOWAS dominance. Historically, France's resource dominance in the Sahel was baked into post-colonial pacts, allowing companies like Orano, formerly Areva, to dictate terms in Niger's uranium sector, where the country supplied up to 25% of France's nuclear fuel needs, powering the 56 reactors that generate over 70% of the nation's electricity. Under agreements dating back to the 1970s, French firms operated with right of first refusal on strategic exports, setting prices that left Niger, despite being one of the world's top uranium producers, with paltry revenues, often less than 10% of the mineral's market value, while locals endured poverty amid environmental degradation from mining operations. In Mali and Burkina Faso, gold mining was similarly skewed. French-linked companies such as Endeavour Mining and others held lucrative concessions, extracting billions in gold annually. Burkina Faso alone produced over 50 tons yearly by 2022, under contracts that funneled profits to Paris while host governments received minimal royalties, sometimes as low as 3 to 5%, exacerbating inequality in regions where mining displaced communities and polluted water sources. This era of free or arbitrarily priced access peaked during France's military presence under Operation Barkhane, which deployed thousands of troops ostensibly to combat jihadists but also safeguarded economic interests. In Niger, Orano's Samer and Cominac mines were hubs of extraction, with uranium shipped directly to France at prices French officials reportedly dismissed as non-negotiable, even as Nigerian leaders pleaded for fairer deals. Mali's gold fields, including the Lulo-Gaon-Kodo complex, saw French subsidiaries thrive amid political instability, while in Burkina Faso, sites like Hound and Mana yielded high-grade or with little reinvestment in local infrastructure. Lithium prospects in the region, vital for France's electric vehicle ambitions, were scouted by European consortia with French backing, promising to secure supplies for the green transition without equitable sharing. These arrangements, critics argue, perpetuated a cycle where Sahel nations, rich in resources, remained among the world's poorest, with France reaping the benefits through subsidized energy and industrial advantages. The turning point came with the coups. Mali's in 2020 and 2021 led to the expulsion of French troops by February 2022, followed by Burkina Faso's demand for withdrawal in January 2023, and Niger's ouster of French forces and diplomats between 2023 and 2024. These moves, fueled by anti-French sentiment over perceived neocolonialism, triggered a cascade of nationalizations. In Niger, the junta under General Abdourahmane Tiani seized control of Orano's uranium operations in December 2024, halting exports and stockpiling 1,150 tons of uranium concentrate valued at $210 million, which Niamey later sought to sell to Russia, bypassing French claims. By mid-2025, Orano faced bankruptcy threats as operations suspended, with arbitration battles at the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, ICSID, yielding no resolution, and Niger rejecting French authority over its resources. In Mali and Burkina Faso, the shifts were equally stark. Mali's junta renegotiated gold contracts, imposing higher taxes and expelling Western firms in favor of Russian partnerships, reducing French-linked output by over 50% as Wagner/Africa Corps secured mines in exchange for military aid. Burkina Faso followed suit, nationalizing assets and pivoting to Moscow, with gold exports, previously dominated by French concessions, now funding junta initiatives amid a halving of revenues for European operators. Lithium and other critical minerals have seen similar disruptions, with AES states forming joint ventures excluding France, further isolating Paris from emerging supply chains. These expulsions have plunged France into a resource crunch. Uranium imports from Niger plummeted post-2023, compelling France to ramp up purchases from Kazakhstan and Australia at premiums of 20 to 30%, straining EDF, Électricité de France, budgets and raising nuclear fuel costs by billions annually. Gold shortages have hit French jewelers and investors, with supply chain volatility contributing to a 15% rise in import prices. while lithium deficits threaten Macron's green energy goals, forcing reliance on volatile global markets amid US-China tensions. Broader economic ripples include weakened trade balances, job losses in mining subsidiaries. France had over 200 companies in Mali alone pre-coup, and heightened energy insecurity, with analysts warning of potential blackouts if alternatives falter. Diplomatic isolation compounds the issue, as AES nations deepen ties with Russia and China, offering concessions that once favored France, making reacquisition almost impossible without forceful intervention. Tying back to the leaked meeting, sources suggest Macron's outreach to Tinubu reflects this desperation, viewing the US base as a gateway to reverse these losses through proxy actions in Burkina Faso, potentially reopening doors to gold and beyond. Yet, with Russian mercenaries entrenched and local resistance mounting, the path to reclaiming these free resources grows ever more treacherous, as economic pressures at home mount and global rivals circle.